What's going on, y'all? Welcome back. Shane Sam's here, the Shane Sam Show. Got another one of my amazing friends on here today, and I need to start the show a little special. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Tom, you 40-year-old man. Happy birthday. Welcome to the back nine of life.
Oh,
I,
I'm pretty impressed. That was good, Shane.
that was hey, listen, I got a face for radio and a voice from heaven. You know what I'm saying? I can do this, man. 40, man. What's 40 feel like? We'll talk about all this other junk here in a minute, man. But how did that feel? How did it taste when you just stuck your teeth into that 40 burger?
Yeah, I think it's the same as every other birthday. Like you're like, oh, everything's gonna change when I hit this age or when my net worth hits this thing. And it's like you wake up and every day is the same.
The horrors of life are still staring you right in the face,
Yeah,
right?
but here's the thing I'll say though. What was super interesting, like I knew this was kind of like halfway point of life. And so I've spent the last year kind of leading up to it, just thinking about like what did first half look like and what am I creating second half?
Mm,
And most people have this like midlife crisis. And I didn't experience that at all. I was like, I got like a midlife gratitude and acceleration. It's
mm,
like first half was a challenge, but all that hard work and some smart decisions ended up getting me to a really good spot. Like I've already won at life. Now
yeah,
it's like, how do we do even more of that second half? How do we
yeah.
take that impact and show everyone else what's possible?
Yeah, how do you run the score up a little bit? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, how do you
Yeah.
do that? And like, when I turned, I think 45 hit me harder than 40. Like from a, it's weird. Let's get philosophical here, guys. I'm gonna put on my philosophy hat right now. I got Plato. I got a statue of Plato and Marcus Aurelius behind me, so
I've
this
got I've
seems
got
fitting.
my Marcus Aurelius right over
Yeah,
here.
that's right, man. We got to keep the Stoics in play. I think 40 was like, that's it. It's 40. Let's just keep rolling. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then 45 hit me because one, you look at life expectancy and you think about how old your parents and stuff are, and you're like, oh crap, I've got less time left for sure now, probably, than I've had. So that's an interesting thought when you kind of realize that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know the time it really hit me? So I was speaking to a group of like high school students and I was kind of giving my story and talking about when I started investing in real estate. And I was like, like 2007, 2008 when the market crashed. And then I started doing the math in my head and I'm like, I think some of these kids were born in 2007, 2008.
Right? Yeah, they were born during the crash and have no idea. It's like 9/11. Like nobody, they know what it is, but they don't. It's not like impactful to them anymore. And when I hit 45 too, I started like evaluating what I wanted to do, not what I wanted to build.
Mhm.
And I don't think I got any less ambitious necessarily. I still have ambition. Like I don't think I got less goal oriented, but I did get a little bit more like day to day, what am I actually doing? Like what am I actually doing on a day to day basis? Like if I woke up, tomorrow and 46 was all I got. You know what I'm saying? Like, what did I do yesterday? Not what did I do my whole life. So I do think some of that has definitely creeped in as I got to, as I crossed 45. It's like just maximizing the moments and the
Yes.
minutes more than the mission and the money, you know?
Yeah.
And
Have you
like,
seen have you seen those life calendars where they have like
oh, yeah, take your
yeah,
days away or
so
whatever.
exactly. So the whole concept there is memento mori. And I remember the first time I heard it, it was like, remember you must die. And when
Hmm.
people hear this, they think it's this like gruesome thing. Like, and I looked at it, and the first time I saw it, I was like, well, so live fully today, right?
Yeah.
Like, if today was the last day, to your point, would I be happy with how I live this day? And so
Yeah.
I look at that every day when I walk into my office, and I'm like, what a great reminder of like, I got another day. Like, let's go make the most of
Yeah,
this.
man. And like I think too, like as we get, I think what I'm noticing more, like I still feel great. Like I work out, 4 or 5 times a week, eat pretty good. I try to stay as healthy as possible. I don't have any health problems necessarily, right? But what I'm noticing as I get a little older, that's making things feel more urgent, which will actually lead into what we're going to talk about, I think, is just the people around me getting older, or the like the town I live in. I see some of the older, some of the buildings look older than they used to me. And even as I watch, like, my friends in business and stuff, like I see a few more people go out of business. I see a few more people kind of fade away. And I'm like, wow, that's insane, man. And like, like it's weird to think that like, oh, some of the people I talk to all the time might not even be in business in 5 years because they just retire or they just do something else or sell their company or whatever. And you're just seeing, I notice that more as I've crossed that 45-year-old kind of plane. So enjoy your next 5 years, what I want to tell you. You've got 5 more years of peace, and then you're going to become an insane man like me that just wants to sit on his back porch and smoke a cigar and think about the birds flying.
Hey, I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah, man. All right. Real quick, why are we talking? That's what you do. Tell everybody about who you are, what you do, and where you're coming from. Why are you here? I want to know.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of things, and I'll try to condense this story. But when people ask me, like, Tom, what do you do? I've summarized it down to this: I meet great people, and we do amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like everything I do is summed up there. But long story short, you know, went to high school. Like most people, thought the path to wealth and happy life was college, get a job, work one place for 45 years. Got ready to graduate college, looked at what the rest of my career was going to look like. And as a software developer, it was sitting in front of a computer and coding. And I was like, what did I do?
You did software? I did not even know that, and I've known you for a decade. I didn't know you did that, dude. I cannot picture you like sitting in a cubicle designing software. No chance.
Exactly. So at that moment, my, then girlfriend, now wife, we both got ready to graduate. And I was like, okay, we got a bunch of debt. I don't like the path I'm on. Neither of us have jobs. Like, I got to figure something out. And so I set this goal to retire by 35. And I don't know where it came from. And I had no idea how I was going to make it happen. But I was like, it's far enough out to figure it out, but not so far that I'm going to miss out on life.
Mm.
And so as I started sharing this with some of my college friends, two key books came up to me, and I was not a reader. I was the guy that was like, cliff notes, what can I do to like least amount of work to get this done? And so the first book was The Automatic Millionaire. And I read
I've
it
read
and I
that.
was
Good
like,
book.
oh my gosh, like I could be a millionaire if I just start saving money and compound interest. So I love that concept, but I was like, man, I don't want to wait 45 years. So then someone else gave me a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it was
Mm.
like, okay, well, if I invest in assets and make my money or have my money making me money and do entrepreneurship, I could probably get there faster. So I was like, well, what if I combine those two ideas? I could probably make it happen by 35. And so there's a whole bunch of up and down along the way there. But at the end of the day, by having that intentionality and then just like persistence of like every failure is going to teach me more, ended up getting there at 32, which was pretty sweet.
Yeah, man. And you did it. You did it a lot through real estate and off brick and mortar type stores and a literal
Yeah.
physical world stuff. Is how you built your first businesses, right?
Exactly. Well, and the whole thing was when I got out of college, I was like, okay, how do people make money? Like, if it's not a job, what do they do? And so I started like looking at the stock market, and then I was like, oh yeah, I don't have any money and I don't know anything about this. Then I started looking at like, well, what if I like did a business? And I'm like, I don't really know anything about that. Well, what if I did a franchise? And I'm like, well, you got to have like this big net worth to do that, which I didn't realize. And then it was like, well, what about real estate? Like this Robert Kiyosaki guy talks about real estate. What if I could do that? And so my then girlfriend shot every idea down. She's like, listen, we're in debt. We don't have jobs. Go get a job. And so I remember like driving home one day, I was just super stressed, super frustrated. And I heard this ad on the radio for this like free real estate training. So I went to the free training. Free training turned into like a $500 weekend, went to that. And then they pitched this like $40,000 program. And I was like, this is exactly what I need, but I don't have any money. And so I remember I like committed at that moment. I'm like, I'm gonna make this happen. And so
Mm.
I split the 15,000 investment I did onto two credit cards because I didn't even have one that had that much on it. We already had like $200,000 worth of debt. My wife had already told me, my fiance at that time had already told me no. And I'm like, F it, let's do this. So I went all
All
in on
right,
the
hold
real
on.
estate
This
training.
is supposed to be a podcast of good advice, okay, guys? So, but this actually is good advice. That's what's hard to understand is because if you do something with what you buy, it'll return more than you can ever imagine. And
Exactly.
probably don't say F it to your girlfriend or your wife until you
Yeah.
actually talk about, yeah,
So
right.
lots of good lessons from that, right? And and it was really challenging when I had to tell her that. And this was about 9 months before we got married. And I didn't know if we were going to get married. So we had to have a lot of really cool or really difficult conversations. But the cool thing that came out of this was we realized that our life vision and what we wanted was the same. We
Mm,
just had a different idea of how we were going to get there.
yeah.
So once we were aligned on that, then we could figure out, all right, what roles are we each going to play and how are we going to make this work? And
Mhm.
for me, it was like, well, I just spent all this money on a credit card. I better go buy some real estate to start paying that thing back. And so
Heck
that
yeah,
was how
man.
I got started into everything.
That's an amazing, as a guy who, I hate people that complain about, oh, they're selling a $20,000 course. Yeah, but it'll make you 200,000 a year if you'll just shut up. You'll go take out $100,000 loan for a college degree in, freaking, European studies, but you won't invest in these trainings. And like, it's so funny when you see the people that succeed. Like, I've always been that kind of person too. Like, when I go pay $25,000 to learn something, I'm making 100 or dying when I come back. And that's what you did. Like in these seminars and these live events and these courses and these coaching, like everyone wants to complain about them, except for the people that become the testimonials, because they're the ones that actually go do it. And that fire that gets lit under you when you invest something like I've spent like $250,000 on coaching, like in the
Yep.
past, 12 years or whatever I've been doing this entrepreneur stuff. But even before that, one thing that I used to love to do was go to football clinics when I was a football coach. And all these other coaches would just go to drink beer at the bar and hang out. I was going to every session. I was buying everybody's $30 defensive back drills DVD, and I would go home and watch them over and over and over again. Because when I first started coaching, dude, I was 0-10 my first year as a head coach. I got running clocked 8 games in a row. I felt like the worst coach on the planet Earth. And a lot of people would just say, well, I'm going to quit, or I'm going to do something else, or maybe coaching's not for me. But I was like, no, I know I'm good at this. I just have to figure out how to get better at it. Right. I know I want to do this. I have a passion for it. So I have to get better. So everybody else is all like spending their money on beer and, wings. And I'm over here buying, some random coach's VHS tape to try to learn how to a nose guard's supposed to slant. you know,
VHS tape. You definitely just dated yourself.
yeah, man. And like but you know what? The last year I coached, we turned a program completely around. First time they'd ever had a winning like season in like 20 years. We were 8-2. We made the playoffs for the first time in school history. Like, but I used every dime that I paid for. And that's really what you got to do with this stuff, man. If you're going to invest in something like a coaching program or a seminar or anything like that, I love hearing stories of people who went to a seminar, paid the money, and used it to actually get their goal. It's almost like this stuff works, people, if you just put the effort in.
And here's the crazy thing. So what I bought was like these four like coaching days or weekends or whatever. So I went to the first one and I realized the program I bought was absolute garbage. So I didn't even finish the program. And so a lot of people are like, well, Tom, so that was a waste of money, right? That was a stupid decision. And I was like, no, because I realized that I already had what I needed. This program wasn't going to do anything for me, but what it did was it lit that fire to be like,
It was the decision.
correct.
Yep.
So people look
Yep.
at it like this interesting coach that I had years ago. He kicked off his program and he said, I'm going to give you my bio. And it was like all the highlights and all the stuff we all see. And then he goes, let me share my anti bio with you. And it's all the stuff that we normally tuck away. And I took that
Mm-hmm.
idea because I went back to my anti bio and I listed out all the reasons I should have failed or all the mistakes I made. And I can point to every single one of those and show how that led to my success. So it's
Yeah.
like so much of this is just how you're viewing a situation and what you decide to do with it.
It's also too, like, one thing that I've bought some really bad courses, and I've went to some really bad live events. You know what I'm saying? I've definitely, quote unquote, oh, I wasted my money. They took my money. No, that's not true. Because, if I bought this one course one time, it's really early on. It was about webinars, right? It's like $1,000, which was probably the biggest course I'd bought at the time, but nobody knew what webinars were in 2012. You had to buy a course.
Mm.
You did no choice, right? These were new things. And like, I remember watching that course, and at first I was like, this is stupid. This is dumb. But then I had this like mindset shift. I was like, well, wait a minute. This doesn't feel worth $1,000. But what if I find something that I know I will extract $1,000 out of what I just paid? There's something in here that I don't know, right? And one of the things I learned from that video, which I still teach today when I train speakers, was this guy had this part of his webinar. Everything else was just cookie cutter nonsense, stupid stuff. But this one thing, he called it permissions. I'll never forget him going back. I went back through the training to dig for gold, right? And he said something really interesting. He was like, you have to ask permission to the audience for everything you do. And like, I was like, really? What are you talking about? And it was like permission for the sale. You can't just like drop a sales pitch at the end. That's bait and switch. You got to ask that, you have to give them permission to listen. You have to ask for permission to even be the speaker. Like you're just a person to them. Like you can't just say, "Hi, I'm Shane Sams. I know everything." No, you have to say, "Hey guys, I'm Shane Sams. Would it be okay if I shared my experience with you and taught you something?" And you have to learn how to get that permission. So I took that one throwaway line this guy had in his thing. It was probably 1 minute of the whole course. And I evolved that out into like now, whether I'm building a 16-hour seminar, a 45-minute keynote, or even my own webinars or my own things, I spend about an hour on permissions. Like, how am I going to get this? How am I going to give them permission to like me? How am I going to get their permission to sell them something? How am I going to do this at the beginning? And I swear that's made me millions. That's made me, I extracted, I will get my pound of flesh out of everything I invest in, dude, one way or the other. And I think if more people would think like that, like I hate people that buy coaching programs and then they don't do it and they blame the coach, or they do what they say, but it's half-hearted, or they don't like the personality of the coach they got assigned, or whatever their excuse is to like hold them back, instead of saying, wow, I have this opportunity to engage with another person and learn something that could make me a lot of money. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, and that's what, we were talking about Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism. Like that was the big thing that I really stuck out to me was like, okay, there's things I can control and there's things I can't control. Right. And it's like things are going to happen. Like maybe I'm going to make a decision where it's not the best program or whatever else. So I can choose to be that victim and to like, woe me. Or just like you did, it's like, well, I can choose to make this valuable. Let me go find that value. Right. And whichever story you tell yourself in whichever way you go, like that's what's going to show up for you.
That's what's going to happen. Yeah. And I love what you said about the, like, it's not necessarily the course, the training, the live events you attend, the coaching program you hire, whatever it is. It's that decision that you're going to do something about your life, right? Like I am deciding to hire. Sometimes I hired a coach one time for a year. It was like 30 grand. I never even asked him a question. I just wanted 30 grand on the table to show up every week and someone be like, I have to be here. And I needed some accountability in my life at that point, right? I just needed to know that I spent 30 grand. I needed to show up. And that anchor place every week on the year of coaching that I did with this coach. Like, he never told me anything magic, never did anything, but like I always started my week with, okay, there's my $30,000 coach. Shit, I need to work on this. I need to go build my podcast. I need to go build my community. I need to go do these. I need to write this book. I need to do these other things, because that gave me that. Same thing with my book coach. Like, my book coach is Azul. He's been on the podcast, and like he's an amazing book coach, awesome book coach. I could have figured out what he taught me. Honestly, I could have probably figured it out, but I paid a lot of money to figure it out with him. And that actually made me like figure it out. Like, once I had invested the money, I had to like go out and actually do the thing. Same thing with coaching. So tell me about 2X. I just spoke at your all's event, which was awesome. I've been through a lot of coaching programs. I've coached thousands of people. I've done all this. I've know a lot of coaches. I was really freaking impressed, man. I just want to tell you guys that up front, man. I went to this mastermind y'all hosted. You were doing a thing on team building. I taught, how to use your story in your team building process to cast your vision and make sure everybody's on the same page. And just, it was amazing the quality of people in that room. And it was so full circle for me, because we met when you came to one of my live events, and it was kind of like that. Like, you were in the seat and I was hosting the live event, and then I was speaking at your event and being in there and seeing that. And I just saw like a bunch of people who really valued themselves, their business, and the coaching, the valued the coaching and what it was doing for their business. So tell everybody about what you're doing now, coaching business owners, and like
Yeah.
what 2X is, and we'll talk about coaching a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just like you talked about, so the reason we met was because I've always had this view of like, let me find amazing people and let me do whatever I can to get in front of them. And so a big way that I did that for a long time was just going to events with people that I wanted to meet. Right. And so like you and Jocelyn had your event. I was working with getting Ariana, my wife, and I together in our businesses. I'm like, other people are doing it. Let's go meet them and see how they're doing it. Right. And so I think what's really important is whether it's your team, whether it's your clients, it's like, who are the great people that I want to be surrounded with? So with 2X, we work with business owners that are are, mid six figures a year. Like they've started building the business. They maybe got a little bit of a team, but they're hitting that plateau to go from like small business that's kind of figured it out and based around the owner into like true CEO that's building a business that isn't reliant on them. And
Mm.
really the big thing that really inspired me for this was that I did this a couple of times in the offline business world. To your point, I did it with real estate investing. I did it with a retail wine and liquor store. I did it with a corporate consulting business. And then when I got into this online space, it blew my mind that there's so much opportunity, but with that, there's also so many shady people that haven't really done the thing or know how to do it, yet they were
What?
offering all these coaching programs.
Listen, don't you bash that $500 coaching course they took to become a coach. Don't you do that. Just
Um,
you and your real world experience that you
yeah,
need
how
to do
dare
anything.
me?
No
And
doubt, man.
so with that, it got me very disappointed to see all these people that had great visions, great potential for their businesses, and yet they were just led astray, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not. And
Yeah.
so after, we left our jobs and hit that freedom point, what I realized was through, the work with a mentor, he's like, "Well, Tom, the reason you're so depressed now, even though you have the money and the time with the family," he goes, "You love people, like, and you love building businesses, and you're not doing either of those." He goes, "Do you know how many businesses out there have great potential, but don't have people that know how to do it?" He's like, "What if
Mm,
you help them?" And so
mm,
I was like, well, that's an interesting concept. Let me try that. And the more that I started doing that, the more I realized that so many businesses have the opportunity to succeed if they simply have the right guidance and support. And
yeah.
so what we do at 2X is we take those businesses that have gotten that initial like success, but they're getting stuck and they see so much more. And we show them how to take it from, we call it the six-figure hustler. This business that's built around this owner that they really built a job for themselves, and we work on turning them into that seven-figure CEO that actually has built a business and an asset that generates wealth and income for them without them having to do everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They can just lead instead of actually having to turn all the gears and shovel all the coal and do all those things.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go on a tangent real quick because you said something interesting there. Depression, right? This was a weird thing for me as well because I've had a couple bouts with this over the years, which Tom and I, we'll talk about this on another episodes, but we've been mental health bros for about 4 or 5 years now together,
Mhm.
and going through our own mental health journeys. But like, when I was a teacher, I mean, life's always hard. I don't care if you're a multimillionaire or whatever. Life's hard, people. It just really is. Like we're going through a really bad situation right now. We've got a grandparent uh basically dying from cancer, requires 24-hour care. The grandmother is like not, you know, able to help much, so we're like constantly chipping in. Like it doesn't matter what you're doing, something's going to be hard. But I was surprised after, quote unquote, we were successful, right? I mean, if you watch us on our Instagram, I mean, of course we travel, we have fun, we go to all these things, our kids are amazing. Like, I've got a lake sitting in my back porch. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would think there would be no room for depression or anxiety and struggles and stress and terribleness, right? But it's not, that's not true, man. Like you get, especially like when you go too passive, this is a something I caution all my clients from. Don't go too passive. Like you do not want passive income. You want passive income so you can take a month off. You don't want where you don't have anything to do every day and you're just working an hour. I've done that before. It
Yep.
sucks. It leads straight into a depression abyss of existential like angst. Like, what do you think? Like, so you said what was causing that when you went through that to have that revelation of, oh, I'm not doing the things that I'm purpose driven to build. I'm not setting mission. I'm not building those things. I got to retirement and it sucked. What caused that? Because I think it's just cautionary, man. Like people need to watch
Yeah.
out for that, dude, when they're building businesses.
Yeah, it is. Well, and like I said, my goal was to retire by 35, and I did it at 32. And so everyone on the outside is like, that's amazing. Congrats. And it was amazing for a bit, but you just called it out. So I went from being mission driven, like the next thing, like always building something that I cared about, to then just stopping it all.
Mm.
And what I realized in, my personal health journey is that I think the first part of our life, we're chasing internal satisfaction and worthiness. We're trying to figure out our way in the world, and we're working through our own stuff to figure out who we really are.
And we're trying to do that though. This is something I've learned in my own mental health journey is like, And we're trying to do that through external scoreboards.
Correct.
That's the problem.
Yes.
I'm going to retire at 35. I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to sell 100 courses. I'm going to be an influencer on TikTok. And like these are all external things. And when all the external things line up, you realize, oh, I still feel terrible. What's going
Yes.
on? Right?
Well,
Yeah.
and it's a great call out there. Those are the external things, and I think you can use them, right? Like
Yeah, for sure.
nothing
They're
is
necessary.
nothing is bad. So the reason I had so much success early on was because my parents got divorced, all my friends had money and I didn't, and I had to work 3 jobs in high school to like even just pay rent. Right?
Mm,
So I had a very different upbringing, but I used that like not feeling worthy to prove to everyone that I was worthy.
yeah.
Now, I used the motivation and it worked, but thankfully I had a mentor that was like, well, Tom, this will keep driving you to that external success, but it's never going to make you happy.
Mm,
And that all came about the time when I like wasn't working, I had retired. And what I realized was this is when I get back to what's really going to make me happy. And, I found a couple of things. When we talk about goals, most people talk about 2 categories of goals to begin with. They talk about the things they want, which money will buy, and they talk about the experiences they want, which time will buy. So that's our kind of main compass when we start out as entrepreneurs. Then we get to this point where we realize there's 2 other categories we didn't even think about, but they're the most important. The first is relationships, the people in your life, and that starts with you and loving yourself. And the second is impact, how you're helping those around you. And what got me out of depression was one, realizing what made me happy and loving myself, but two, realizing that helping people and giving that impact is really what lights me up. So did I ever think I was going to be a coach? No, but really what it's about is helping people to change lives, and the more people that I help, and like when I get the success stories or what they were able to do as a result of that, that's what internally drives me.
yeah. And how many times have you said in your life, like what you just said, like, man, I hate people that bash coaching. Y'all are stupid if you don't hire a coach. Everybody needs coaches all the time. You can change them and you can get different coaches for different things. Like I have more personal coaches right now, I think, is where I'm kind of like, that's where I'm
Yeah,
investing my coaching time is with more personal mental health kind of driven stuff over here. Not necessarily, but I've hired, but when I need a business coach, I go hire the business coach. When I need a book coach, I go hire like the book
yeah,
coach. But like you said something interesting, you went like, I had a mentor tell me, dude, like you have to have someone tell you stuff because you just don't
absolutely.
know it. You just don't know what you don't know. And even when you know it, you can't read your own label inside the pill bottle. Right. And
Absolutely.
like the only way to get that perspective, well, I'm not gonna say the only way. People are like waiting around for Gandalf to show up with the one ring for them. That's so stupid. Just go hire Gandalf. Like you can literally reach out right now and get a business coach or get a speech coach or get any kind of coach that can really show you what you need to do, hold you accountable, and then you make the decision to invest in yourself. So you're going to be more motivated to like do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
and
man.
there's a key quote that really helped me have empathy for a lot of people, and it's people are doing the best they can based on what they know. So when I hear
Mm.
somebody bashing coaching, or for example, like, we go to marriage therapy and someone's like, "Oh my gosh, you guys getting divorced?" It's
Are
like,
you guys
"No."
okay? Are you
Yeah,
guys
like
okay? Yeah.
it's like,
My mom says that all the time. We had a relationship
yeah,
coach for about 6 months, and she's like, "Are you guys okay? Is everything going to be all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's really good. That's why we're making it better. We're
exactly.
trying not to go the other way. It's like yeah, it's prevention. An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure, right? Like prevent the
Exactly.
problems before they start."
Yeah, well, it's like, what's the most important for you? Well, your mental health, your physical health, your relationships, your business, whatever it is, get support and get a coach, right? And your coach might be, when you first start out, a book. It might be a podcast. It might be this free stuff. But over time, you're going to find that the level of support you need increases, and that only comes through people. Right.
Yeah.
So early on, I'm a big proponent of like not overspending, right? Invest to your level, but what you're going to realize is that investing in the right people and getting the right support, the more
Mhm.
successful you are, the more of those investments you're going to make, and the more they're all going to pay off.
Yeah. There's no ROI I can point to than going to a live event to meet an influencer or like like one of my goal is always to be the best testimonial someone's ever had. Like
Yeah.
there's a reason Pat Flynn still shares my podcast interview from a few years ago and keeps inviting me back on the show is because I love Pat. I consider him a coach and a mentor, and I will do whatever I can to be his best testimonial forever, right? Because he taught me everything I needed to get my family freedom. And that's like irreplaceable, right? And it's the same thing with coaching. If you're only going to get what you put in it, right?
Yeah.
It's like therapy. It's like freaking marriage counseling. It's like your kids. It's like, if you go into it like, I hired this coach, where's my miracle? No, that's when the real work begins, is when you hire the coach. I love your guy. I'm gonna shine some light on you guys too. The What you said a second ago about the impact that people make, and like those two things after money and time, right? Or experiences or whatever, right? Relationships and impact. Okay. Man, I wish I had figured this out 5 years ahead of time in my own journey, that it wasn't just about the money and the time, right? But like when I was at that mastermind that you guys hosted, what's her name? Thais? Is that her name? Thais?
Ice.
Thais, yeah. So she was like just like as excited as I get about speaking or online business or like whatever I talk about. She was that excited for impacting roofing companies. Like that's her business. Is she supports roofing companies with all their back end and stuff like that. And from a culture standpoint, I now see, I'm just putting the dots together. Like you guys, what you just said, I can see that in your coaching, and I can see her living it in her business, because I've talked to her a little bit since that after we had that meeting, and it's amazing just to see that coaching play out in her life. Like she is so lit up about the impact they make. All she talked about with me when I talked to her about these roofing companies was like how these guys they know how to put a roof on, but they don't know how to run the business, and they're working 90 hours a week, and they don't know how to lead their team, and they don't know how to make payroll, and they don't know how to do all these things that they support her with. But it had nothing to do with all those machineries of how she made money. It was just the simple fact that she was like, the relationships with those roofers and the relationship that they have with their customers, all that like bled through. So that's like core values of your coaching program right there, spilling out, dude. That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. It's the core values. And then the other part, which is why I love the work that you do, is it comes down to the story, right? So the story could be, well, I just help roofing companies with all their back office stuff. But when you talk to her, you realize that it's so much more, right? And I think every entrepreneur has that story, and a lot of them struggle to tell that story. And when they struggle, like they're not bringing the team in. And that's why we brought you in, right? To talk about, like, hey, this story is to be attracting your team, it's to be attracting your customers, and it's to tell people like why should they care,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And so the better that people can get connected to their own story and then share that out and get people bought in, the easier everything else we do in businesses.
Yeah, man. How do you guys? Okay, so let's talk. This is more for like just mechanics of coaching in general, because everybody coaches like a little bit different, like with how they want to serve their like people. There's a lot of coaches that listen to this podcast, probably they want to go out and just coach people or add coaching, hire coach, whatever. How do you guys coach? I noticed that you guys were very in the weeds. That's one thing I really noticed about you. Like you knew every minutia of everyone's business, and everyone seemed to know the minutia of their business through what you guys were like presenting. So like when you guys were forming 2X, there's a lot of business coaches, man. We all know that. And yet you and Austin both have bona fides and backgrounds. That's fine. But like how do you guys coach? Like what have you guys found has been the best way to get results for your clients?
Yeah, well, it comes down to a couple key principles. And so at the end of the day, it's understanding where the business is at, understanding the personal and business vision for that entrepreneur, and then
Mm,
essentially charting the simplest and most direct path to get there. And, I had a mentor years ago who said, Tom, if you walk up a set of stairs, it's pretty easy if you do step one, step two, step three. It's a lot more difficult if you do step one, then you try to skip to step seven, then you fall back down to step two. He's like, that's a lot more difficult. So the approach we take is like, just like GPS, where are you at? Where do you want to go? And then let's chart the simplest and most direct path to get there. And a
mm,
lot of times, complexity comes into the business. So, what we do with people is we're like, how do we simplify this? How do we cut this out? Let's get super clear on who you work with and why you work with them, what the problems are. Let's get super clear on their long term journey, not just the initial problem, but what they want long term. And then let's
mm.
design everything around serving that person and building all the elements of the business. Because like
I
what I
hear.
find happens for a lot of people is that they either do it in the wrong order, or if they're trying to hire a lot of different coaches, they don't have that main strategy together. So they
Yeah.
might get really good at marketing, but if they can't sell, it doesn't make sense. So
Mm.
instead of trying to piece all these different things together, what we do is we take a holistic look at the business, take a holistic look at what they want, and then we build the right strategy and help them implement one step at a time.
do you guys meet with people like weekly? Do you meet with people in group cohorts? Like how do you do the coaching? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody, all businesses in the modern world have courses, coaching, and community. That's what everybody does, right?
Yep.
But like, how do you hold these people? Like, once they set their personal and business goals, like, how do you hold their feet to the fire? How do you get them to actually do the things? Like, and then how do they have access to you guys? Like, how do you structure all that?
Absolutely. So to your point, we hit on those four key things. So the main part of this is quarterly planning, right?
Mm,
So it's like, what are you trying to do in the next 90 days? Let's make sure that we've got the right numbers and the right plan for that. So we build the first one for people, and then we teach them how to do it for the subsequent ones, and everyone does it together with our feedback. Then they
yeah, I
get
see.
a direct coach, and twice a month they're having meetings with that coach, and these are strategic. What are the numbers? Are you on track or off track? What are the biggest problems? And are you focused on the right things for the month? So that
Mm,
way they're strategically going in the right direction and they're clear on their action plan.
mm.
Then we have twice a week group clinics on marketing, sales, strategy, and then operations and fulfillment. So they can come to any of those clinics and get specific tactical advice on that. In addition, we have the community piece of the in person mastermind, virtual masterminds, and then every month we do implementation sessions so that they walk away with a key asset for the business.
That's interesting that you have multiple subjects in these weekly things. I've never thought to do that before. I usually do like, hey, it's a community call. We're going to talk about this thing. But you have like, okay, so Bob is okay. Your problem's the marketing numbers. You're not getting enough clicks, or Sally's problem is where you got sales. Okay, that's your goal this quarter, or you've got a problem this quarter. So that person just comes to those sales things. Basically, they get like just in time learning for like what they do. That's pretty smart. I've actually never heard anybody do that
Exactly. And
before.
then what's super cool
Yeah.
with that too is everyone, like, because we used to do the same thing, like just, hey, come show up, we'll answer your question. But what we found is that if everyone's coming together for a sales, clinic, everyone there is interested in sales and everyone has some experience. So now
Mm.
people aren't just learning directly from the coach, they're actually learning from each other. And we have so many great entrepreneurs that we work with that it's like, well, why would we limit it to just our knowledge? Why wouldn't we tap into the whole collective community?
Yeah, that's really cool. And then I like you said something that was interesting there. People get this confused all the time. Like, your coaching is not consulting.
Yes.
Like, it's not consulting. There's a difference. Like, when I coach people in online business, it's very much the similar thing. It's like teach a man to fish. Like, that's really what we're trying to do. It's like we got to find the unique things that are in your online business, your podcast, your community, whatever it is. When I'm doing story pitch, like, or speaker coaching, I'm consulting. This is not, you're tapping into my vast experience of moving the masses from stage, and I'm going to tell you what to say for the first one. Now, you're going to iterate. Don't let me get me wrong, but like, I think people conflate those two things. They think they're hiring a consultant that's going to solve all their problems and fix all their stuff. But really, coaching is designed to hold you accountable, teach you how to do the global meta things correctly. Like, do you know how to quarterly plan? Do you know how to figure out what you're actually working on and say no to things in the next 12 weeks? And then you have access to information. Like, if you need to be like, hey, have you ever done blank? Like, if any, have you ever gotten a liquor license? You know how to do that because you own a wine and liquor store, right? Like, that would
Yep.
be a thing I could ask you, but it's not what coaching is. Coaching is
Yeah.
designed to keep you accountable, help you see the holes, uh, pay attention to you when you're backpedaling and you fail. Why'd you fall? Well, your left foot was behind the right foot, whatever, right? Like, that's what coaching is. And I think too many coaches, when they set up their businesses, they try to be consultants. They try
Yep.
to tell people what to do, and then those people don't get results because you're just projecting something that you think is right, which may not be even what they need. You're just telling them what you think you're seeing, basically.
Exactly. And to that point, like I often don't get into the nuances, but like consulting is basically like I'm the expert. I'm going to tell you what to do. Right. So
Yeah.
when you hire a consultant, you're expecting them to tell you what to do. A
Yep.
coach is more so like you're the expert, but you're not seeing the blind spots. Let me ask the questions
Oh,
and pull
yeah.
this out of you.
Yeah,
Right. And
man.
then we even get into other things that, like, an advisor, somebody that is not going to tell you what to do, but they're going to give you guidance and advice. And then you got things like mentors, the people that have been there, done that, they've seen it all, and they can give you the guidance on it. Right.
Yeah.
So, like, it's important when you go to hire a coach or join a program to be very clear on what you're looking to get out of it and make sure it matches. And what I've found is that the best coaches are actually like chameleons, right? There's going to be some times where I get on a call and I'm like telling you what to do. And I'm maybe a little bit forceful because that's what you need to get a shift to break through the next level. There's
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
be other times where maybe I'm not telling you at all, but I'm asking you questions to probe and help you to get clarity on what's actually important. So the
yeah.
best coaches are the ones that can have that overall plan, but then ask the right questions or apply the right pressure to constantly get the breakthroughs and shifts so that you keep growing and elevating.
And I find when I, again, because I do both, I coach and consult, right? Like I consult on seminars and speaking, I coach more in business. What I find about the pressure thing is like that usually comes from the student in a coaching relationship. Like if we, like let's say we're on a I did this inner circle thing for a couple years where people would come on, kind of mastermind, hot CD, kind of, just simple little mastermind structure. And it's like, someone would come on and they would be like, and I'd be like, hey, where are you at in the program? What are you doing? What are you working on? Like, what's going on? Let's just get it all on the table. Let's pour the Lego bricks out and see what we can build. And they might say something like, oh man, I know that my goal is I want to release a podcast every week for whatever weeks. You know what I'm saying? And then 10 weeks go by and they've got 4 podcasts came out, right? That I'm stepping in and definitely saying you are not succeeding because you are not being consistent and releasing your podcast every week and you're not sharing it every day. You're not being prolific and you're not being consistent at launching a podcast. And if you would just do that, you would go out and you would build a bigger audience. But that even I'm consulting, it's like you said, commit. I'm wearing that hat. But it
Yep.
was your idea, bro. You know what you should be doing. You just gave me money to hold you accountable, right? Like
Yep.
you've got to accept the accountability. That's where I found like in coaching that when the consulting hat slips on, it's like
Yep.
I'm telling them what they know they should be doing, and you're just burning your money on fire by giving it to me if you're not doing it right. I'm confirming. I'm there to confirm. I think a coach is good at confirming. Like, hey, did I do that right? Yes, you did. Do
Yeah.
more of that.
Well,
But it's
confirming and probing, right? Because in that example, it's like, do they know the thing, right? Like I always tell people, like coaching is really just creating shifts and changing. And so if we use a change model, like my favorite one is called ADKAR, and it means awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement.
mm,
So what often happens is that we start with knowledge, like here's how to do the thing, here's how to create that podcast. But if we don't start with awareness of why they should be doing that and desire to do it, we can tell them all day how to do it. Right.
yeah,
So we're going to be consulting when somebody is ready to do the work and we're going to just tell them what to do, the knowledge and the ability. But we're going to be coaching when they know what to do, but they're not doing it.
yeah,
Right.
that's
So it's
right.
like, Shane, you're telling me that you want this, yet you didn't produce these podcasts. Like, what's in the way? What do you think's going on? Oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Right. Well, okay, so Shane, you said this is really important. Why is it important? Right. And why did this other thing trump it? So that's where I'm going to dive in and help understand, do you really want this? And if so, what's in the way? Because once I have you there, then it's just about doing the work. Right.
Yeah,
Like business is not complicated. Here's the number I want to hit. I reverse engineer it into how many customers at what price point. I look at my close rates. I look at how many leads I have. And then I work and say, which strategy am I going to use? It's not complicated. What
no,
gets complicated is the people. And when you have some limiting belief or something that's holding you back, and that's so much of what holds business owners back, is it's not how do I run a webinar or how do I do this thing? It's the fear they have or whatever's showing up for them.
yeah,
And I know you had our friend Jason Brown on. He gave me this quote years ago. He said, you know what? Business is like, I'm going to butcher this. He's like, business is like the ultimate, psychology or psychiatry. But the
oh
cool
yeah,
thing is it's attached with a paycheck. He's
that's
right. So
exactly right.
like you're going to grow more than you do here. But the cool thing is the more you grow, the more you get paid.
It's this can be applied to a couple different things in my life right now, but like it's a mental health, like it's a mental health journey of overcoming your own insecurities. That's what successful people in business do. That's what successful coaches help you do. That's what they do, is they find the insecurity that's making them procrastinate or not do the thing they know they should do. All depression comes from the things you've left undone. I heard someone say that one time. And like that's where it all that's what a great coach can do, is it can highlight exactly what you know you already should be doing and then shine that light on the desire that you want to do it, and then you go do it. And if you
Yep.
can find a coach that can help you do that, that's worth its weight in gold. Like you'll always get the ROI off that if you can get somebody that can actually make you do things. And like I love coaches too. I usually hire coaches when I'm the least motivated to do things on my own, because like I think that motivation is totally like a horrific way to live your life. Like looking to be
Absolutely.
motivated, waking up and being motivated. Everybody's like watching motivational videos, and those are good. External crutches are fine and band-aids when we need them. But like when I'm not motivated, I hire a coach that is motivated. And that person can, it's like being on a team and somebody's excited to run out of the tunnel, then you get excited to run out of the tunnel. Or when me and you like hang out at one of our, mental health journeys or on masterminds, like I come back with the excitement of the awesomeness of the people around me. And I often hire coaches when I'm like the least possibly motivated to do anything in my life whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point with motivation, I talk a lot with people about your environment for success. And that's your physical environment. So I am surrounded, like I literally got a picture of you on the wall over here at one of our mental health journeys of like just reminders of all the amazing people I have in my life. Right. So my
Mm,
physical space sets up to support me. And over here, I got a wall of the impact I have. So all the thank you notes, all the masterminds we run, all the lives changed. So I'm literally surrounded by that. So I have that motivation. But then at the same time, it's the mental piece, right? And that's where like coaches can help and anything we can do to keep the inner environment for success going while
mm.
also supporting it with the outer.
And then some of the things that you guys, this is one of the interesting things I find about your all's business model. Like, and this is more advanced, but I think every coach should have, coaching is not the end game, people. If you're a coach, like you can add things on. Like the whole concept of story pitch came out of we're teaching everyone that they should do a podcast, build an email list, do a webinar, and sell their stuff. Why would we not add a consulting practice on teaching people how to like do the webinar, like really in detail, more than a course? Like we're going to help you build it, do it for you, kind of almost like a service, right? We're adding a service on it. But like as you guys see these needs for people, like you even have this opportunity with all these great people to provide services for these like other businesses and stuff like that. And it's funny how like the coaching is, people think the coaching is what they want to be, but that's really just like the first step of knowing your customers. Like if you're not coaching and you're just selling courses, you are missing out on personal growth and finances in your own life, because interacting at the coach level, one on one, in masterminds, in workshops, in person, online, all these things just spring up that people need, and you get to go meet that need for them, and that's where all the growth and all the revenue comes from.
Exactly. Well, and I'll kind of let you in on the secret for us. So, we've got a multi-stage approach of growing our business. Stage one was coaching. So it's like, how do we get paid to directly help people and create success stories and develop our methods? Right.
Mm,
So that was stage one. Stage two is, okay, well, how do we serve those people outside of what we can serve today, which is with coaching? So if we look at like our client base, they come for coaching, but then what do they naturally do? They're like, hey, my books are terrible. Do you have a recommendation for a bookkeeper? Or, oh, hey, I need an assistant. Like, how do I go find one? So now what we're doing is actually building this ecosystem that all serves that business owner. So
yeah.
it's like instead of having to go do this all on your own, you've got these companies that are within our ecosystem that are trained on our methods and directly there to implement and support you versus you having to go piece this together on your own.
I found our business. I did it the way you were supposed to do it in 2013. Like everyone was like, get a course, record it once, sell it to everybody, all that good stuff. Then we built a community, and when we built the community and we started having Q&As, I was like, oh, they don't want anything in the first course I made. They just like us. And then when I started coaching, I was like, oh, I see you breaking down and crying on a 30-minute call. I know exactly what I'm supposed to make now. I actually saw your emotional meltdown, business owner. Oh, we'll go make that for you right now. We'll fix that. So like coaching, just anyone should be adding coaching to what they're doing. Just it's like I was on Pat Flynn's podcast the other day, and he was talking about like how podcasting like helped me in my business and why I'm so adamant about never stop recording podcasts. And I was like, well, podcasting taught me how to speak. I got to say my stories 1,000 times before I ever walked on a stage. And then everyone was like, you're a natural. No, I'm not. I've got 1,000 hours of podcast on the interwebs and in Chat GPT that proves I practiced. And it's kind of the same thing with like, all the coaching and like everything else is like, it's like when you do it, when you coach, you learn so much faster. Just like when I podcast, every speaker should have a podcast, whether anyone listens or not, because you get all the reps. And coaching gives you all the reps. Like we've had 6,000 people go through Flipped Lifestyles online business program, learn how to build membership sites. I got to see 6,000 people come through our doors. I know exactly how to teach that. I know exactly what questions they're going to ask. There's no question. It's not me trying to figure it out. And that's half the battle as an entrepreneur. Stop trying to figure it out. Just go do the thing, and then interact with people who have done it before so you can get, some wisdom there, and then you'll learn how to actually like sell the stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
might be a tangent, but you just mentioned like how things were in 2013. So I think that's a really important thing to say like, listen, the world is going to evolve, things are going to shift, right? So you should constantly be looking at like how do I up level as an individual and as a leader, and how does my
Yeah.
business have to up level? And right,
Yeah.
like we're coming up on this like, and I hate to be like tagging on to like headlines, but like AI is going to fundamentally change our lives, how
Everything.
businesses work, et cetera. Right. So it's not to say like, all hands on deck, but we should be fully aware of like how the world's changing and trending. And we should be looking at our businesses to say, how do we adapt that approach and how do we leverage AI to still serve that customer and get the result?
I've done this recently, with my coaches, and kind of evaluated. We hit the 10-year mark in 2022 as being online entrepreneurs. We developed a great name for ourselves as people who, promote the membership model, and all those things are still super valid and relevant. And I was like, how have I changed? How has the market changed? What's happening in other places besides this little world that I've created like for myself? So I went through a couple years of, hiring a couple coaches, exploring those things and looking at it. And I have had this dramatic shift. I still totally believe that communities are the way to go. But for me personally, my live interactions with people is how I want to build my business in the future. Because as everything else automates, and I'm seeing so many really smart people that I hang out with all the time having masterminds, having more live events, doing more coaching, like getting in the weeds, like with people. And I think that's where we're kind of going. But like that, my point is not that things are shifting toward live and all the stuff to get away from AI and actually interact with humans and all that good stuff. There's a whole rabbit hole there of the pandemic screwed our brains up forever, and human connection, we lost it for a year. But anyway, but my point is like I needed to reevaluate, and we need to do that often. And you can't reevaluate yourself. You are too close to it. Like you have to go hire a coach or be in a mastermind and have mentors that can look from the outside looking in. You may not hear it on the podcast, but I was mid sentence and a thunderclap shook my whole house and turned all the power off. And then I had to do like 5 reboots and go kick the hamsters to start turning the wheels again. We'll leave all this in. What I was saying was a buddy of mine last week said something very interesting to me. I was on my annual mastermind trip that I take with a bunch of guys. And he was just like, "You've changed, man." He goes, "I don't think you could keep flipped lifestyle going the way it is." But even just hearing a coach, and this guy coaches market, he's a marketing coach, and like, and it was just it was just really confirmation from outside looking in, like, oh man, you need to make some changes, and we need coaches to do that. And you guys are great coaches, man. That's why I just. But we're gonna wrap this up, Tom, before God smites me again and turns off my entire internet. So tell everybody about 2X and where they can find you online before we get knocked off the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me online at the Tom Sylvester, all social media platforms. And then 2X, you can find us at 2x.co. And actually, if anyone wants a free copy of the book, From Six to Seven Figures, all of our greatest coaching tips, they can go to 2x.co/free.
Highly, highly recommended, brother. I love you. Thanks for coming on the podcast, dude.
Love you, man.